All right then. So tonight we're going to talk about credit. We kind of touched on credit before, but that's going to be the thrust of the lecture tonight. The other thing I wanted to touch on too, I got an email or two about how this problem regarding the bank is supposed to, be done, work out. It's again, it's kind of a free assignment to tailor it to your own needs. What I basically want you to do is look at the different banking options out there. Now, the goal is not for me to, get you to give up your local bank or do something like that. But throughout the course of your life, financially, banks are going to change. Different banks are going to come into business or change their, method of delivering services and stuff. And so once in a while, you have to kind of evaluate and see whether, your bank that you're associated with is really the best option or whether it's just, the bank that you've always used and you're with them more out of habit. I mean, and there is some value to having familiarity and having a local easy bank, but sometimes if you look at the services that are provided by the other banks, you might find need to switch or you might decide to stay with your own bank. So, you know, no big deal. But anyway, so for the assignment, you kind of look at the criteria that you're interested in. I mean, if you're somebody who uses ATMs a lot and you're paying fees or something like that, you might want to definitely have that as a criteria. The location, the ease of the common services you need. For me, I'm not really, like I said, I'm not that worried about whether they're paying interest or not because I don't keep enough money in a bank account to worry about that. I'll move it to a what I consider in terms of a pejorative thing. It's a real financial institution, somebody who you know pays a better interest rate and has more services that like a brokerage firm or somebody like that. And again, there's some value to having sort of a firewall with two institutions, one for daily day transactions and another one for long term kind of things. So anyway, that's that. So you come up with your criteria. You might make some sort of matrix. Again, it's not going to be a huge, multi-page thing, but some sort of matrix. Talk about what you like better. Maybe a paragraph explaining what it is that you like about it, and then move on. You're done. So okay. So jumping into credit. Okay, so credit is, certainly not a bad thing. Loans are certainly not a bad thing. You've in terms of real estate again, as the example I always use, that being debt free in real estate may not be the smartest answer. If you're going to save up to pay cash for your first home, good luck with that. You might not get there. You're going to be paying rent for a longer time. You're going to be sacrificing all the tax advantages of owning a home and might not work out for you. As long as the interest rate is low, if in times of high interest rates, it makes a big difference. But credit card debt, that you always carry in a balance or an exorbitant balance, that's horrible. You can't get out from under that. So anyway, so different types of credit. You have like installment credit, yep, or non-installment and installment credit. So open credit is like store credit, like a credit card where you have to hit the minimum payment, but you don't have a certain amount, and there's not like a certain opening and closing date. So it's really easy to start with installment credit when trying to explain this. You're used to that from like a car loan or a house loan. You pay so much per month, you pay it for a certain term, and that's how it works. Now, again, with a home, you can make double payments, and a lot of times, if somebody says well, I want to pay it off quicker, so I'm going to take a 15-year loan. You talk to your, mortgage broker, but you're probably, in my mind, better off taking a 30-year mortgage and just making double payments, and having that flexibility to, if things don't go quite as rosy as you expect or something happens, it doesn't hurt to be ahead. And then also, if it's pretty low interest rates now, like it is now, I'm not necessarily in a hurry to pay off a cheap mortgage. I'm more tempted to invest in something else or something bigger. But when they say being debt free, what kind of debt? If it's credit card debt, yeah, definitely be debt free of that. But if it's home debt, you have to think about that one a little bit more. Revolving open-end credit. So again, based upon credit history, it's more like the non-installment credit. Advantage of using a credit helps build a good credit score, eliminates the need for carrying cash checks. And also, I think for me, it definitely, the carrying cash is nice where you have more or less, you know, access to unlimited funds. But you also have that sort of auditing function to see, where your money went, or especially if you're paying cash for something, you don't have a whole lot of recourse. Where with a credit card, definitely have a record of the transaction, number one, and then sometimes you actually have some protection from the credit card company. I think I told you about, or maybe I didn't. Anyway, my daughter got ripped off one time by a taxi cab guy. She was fairly young, and the guy, you know, charged her 50 some bucks to go like 2 miles. And I called the credit card company immediately and said, "This is how much they charge. This is the distance went." And boom, that guy doesn't get his money. And turns out that guy, they have those taxi medallions or whatever in big cities, and this guy was operating off a taxi medallion from a guy who died a couple of years ago. So there might even been a bigger crime involved. So anyway, she got out of that situation, and I got out of it financially. So it all works. If she would have paid cash, that would have been that. No record, no nothing. So disadvantages of using credit. You need to find discipline in your financial life. And if you can't do it, man, it's going to be tough for you. You know, but it's human nature. I sell some horse equipment and stuff, and one of the things I'm always doing is kind of sizing up the people who are buying it. And I do take credit cards, but I prefer not to because I have to pay a 3% fee. So sell $1,000 worth of stuff, 30 of it's gone. 2,000 bucks, 60 bucks. It's like that's my money, and what did I get out of it? I really don't mind taking a check from folks, but if they aren't quite sure how much they want to get, in terms of how much equipment they're going to buy, I'll often just, well, maybe we should use that credit card because people go, oh, yeah, it's not really money, yeah, I'll go ahead and spend however much. So, me as the merchant in that case, yeah, I'm not helping them out a bit, but I do know that's just the nature of people. So, large accumulation of debt. Yeah, if you're just making the minimum payments, you need to stop that. That's not a good practice. The credit card company, they aren't going to send you any nastygrams, and because they're making money on you, big money, because you're paying a lot of interest. So that works out for them. Let's see next. Equal opportunity creditor, unethical. So there's many credit acts. The author, cites the 2010, but there's always new regulations coming out for consumer protection. Some of them work, some of them don't. But again, a credit versus a debit card, that the rules are more established for credit cards, and you have a little bit, well, your recourse is there's more legal standing when you're talking about credit cards versus debit cards. Debit cards a lot of times are just based upon what the bank will do for you. And so all these things, especially if there's any fraud involved, their propensity to help you out and be friendly is directly proportional to the amount of time that elapses. I when my daughter got ripped off with the taxi, I called immediately. Well, they haven't paid that guy any money, so they're not out anything. They just don't pay that guy off. Now, if you let it go 3 days, that guy has already got his payment. Now they're trying to get money back, or they're just going to eat that loss. No, they're not nearly as friendly. And you let it go 30 days, and yeah, you're screwed. So anyway, be careful with that. But anyway, there are some regulations, but there's ones that have superseded 2010. That's almost 10 years old. Impact of credit payments on savings. Well, go figure. Yeah, if you're spending a whole bunch making, and you're living from paycheck to paycheck, and besides, at least in my mind, spending money that you actually have is much more fun because you don't have that guilt and that feeling that you're should not be doing what you're doing. But sometimes too, for some vehicles or something like that, they'll have these promotional rates that are kind of a loss leader. And if you pay cash, you're not taking advantage of that. And again, if it's some sort of 2% loan or something like that, you're they're whatever. If they're going to give you a better price if you pay cash, you might want to do that. But if it's the same price and it's a super low rate, 0% or something, then yeah, you're kind of foolish not to take the credit. But again, keep in mind what happens with those. You miss a payment or you're late on a payment, and then all of a sudden, boom, the regular interest kicks in and you're hurt. So. How to build a credit history. There's a lot of fallacies in this, and people say, "Oh, I want to get something, just buy something on credit to build my credit history." You can do that, but man, I would not pay, extra interest for that sort of reason because that's kind of a problem. Um, Credit insurance can cover payments under adverse conditions. Now, a lot of times they'll offer this to you saying that it's a huge benefit to you and they're helping you out. Really, they're protecting themselves. And so, it's probably a win-win in that case, and no problem with that. But you'll see this a lot with, they'll call it credit life. Like if you get a mortgage with a house, they'll say, "Guess what? We're so generous. We're gonna give you free life insurance, as part of this policy." And basically you're paying for that policy. That policy's embedded. The cost of that's embedded in the fees you're charging you. And then, oh, by the way, if you happen to die, they're not out there, you know, doing it some tug of war with a grieving spouse trying to get their money for the mortgage. Boom, your little life insurance is in force now, and that money pays off the mortgage, and they don't have to deal with that. I mean, it's a win for you. You now own the house, but the real beneficiary here is the mortgage company who doesn't have to get involved in these drawn out, you know, post death situations that nobody wants to be a part of. All right, so now we're going to talk about credit bureaus. So there's three of them. You're pretty familiar with this. They are business, entities. They make money by selling your credit information. They compile it and then they sell it to customers. You can be the customer. If you want to buy a home, for example, you need to go to a mortgage, broker or anyway lender and get pre-qualified. Typically, if you're a serious, home buyer. And anyway, it costs you like $50. Okay, and then all those credit card, offers you get in the mail, those also, they've used one of these services to, um, you know, decide your credit worthiness as well. And obviously they're getting a better rate, a bulk rate, but same sort of thing. So the one thing about those though is that by law, and they don't want to do this obviously, but they have to give you a credit report annually if you request it. And because there's three separate credit bureaus, you can get that credit report from, any one of those guys. So you could actually do it three times if you wanted, three times a year. The other thing is too, and this is a really important time is to get a credit report, is if you get turned down, I mean, if you never pay your bills and you get turned down, yeah, it probably don't want to see your credit report. I mean, you should, but anyway, but if it's a mystery, if it's like, wait a minute, I thought I was, I had good credit. If you get refused, denied, you can demand to see a credit report, and they will send it to you. Things, it depends on your credit history, but it's shoot, probably about 18 pages or so. And most of the time, for me, it's such a frustrating process. Hopefully, I'm saying for me because I'm lived overseas a bunch and was divorced. And anyway, so it's asking me information that they think I should know that pertains to my ex-wife. That and they're claiming I lived at this address or that address. It's surprising the amount of bad information they have, to tell you the truth. So go through that credit report, and that's once. Well, first you got to get to that credit report, and that's a challenge in itself, answering their questions correctly, depending on the complexity of your life or the amount of bad information they got on you. But anyway, once you get to that thing, then you can get in there and see what you've got. So most of the stuff should be hopefully pretty boring. Just say, paid in full, no problem, no problem. But if there's some negative information in there, especially if it's incorrect, you need to take care of it. And by law, they have to, address it and suspend that negative reporting until, they can prove that it's factual. So, also like an absence of information. If you had a bankruptcy and there's no information for the past 7 years, go figure, nobody's going to give you a loan because they can pretty much decipher what happened there. The fact that you had no credit history means that the court kind of erased it, and it's not a good thing. Bankruptcy is not really a solution. It causes a lot more problems than it does. But the other thing about it too is you may think, for example, you have a card with the Gap or Old Navy or one of those kind of folks or Kohl's or somebody, and when you look on your credit report, it'll say First Bank of Iowa or something, and maybe somewhere down in the subtext you'll see Kohl's or somebody like that reference. So you know Citibank owns a lot of credit. Yeah, if you've got like a Home Depot card, it'll show up as Citibank on a credit report and other things like that. But it's just part of your education in terms of personal finance and keeping track of your stuff is to know kind of what your cards are. And then also if it's just extra cards, that's probably a good time to kind of clean things up and cancel those cards. So you can find out some data on there. Credit scores are based on that information. So if your credit score is not what you want it to be, um, first, don't panic. I mean, if you're buying something right then and you're getting some sort of poor credit referral, then that's a problem. But if you've got sort of a median credit score and you're just getting started, that's kind of standard. And to take on extra debt to improve your credit score, I don't really see the utility in that. These people will give you more credit perhaps than you should have in terms of your ability to hang yourself with getting in way over your head. So I would go easy with that, but each to his own. Um, it'll tell you open, closed accounts. It keeps them on there for a while too. And now this is the other problem. List of companies that have requested your credit report. I got dinged on my credit score. I mean, I was up in the eights or whatever, 800, and for a while there, I was knocked down to sevens or something. And it's just the nature of things the way it is now. I usually don't look at my credit score, but now there's so many people, perhaps your bank or whatever provides you your credit score and tries to scare you saying your credit scores change. Anyway, the deal with my credit score, the reason it's taking a hit was because I was looking at buying something, a large piece of equipment, and I shopped around for the loan to make sure I was getting the absolute best rate possible. Well, because when you're shopping around, let's say you're looking for a car and they say, "Oh, let's run your credit." And then you go to the next dealership, "Oh, let's run your credit." You do that about 3 or 4 times, and throughout the course of that day, your credit score will drop. And I think on mine it said, "Oh, more than 7 credit inquiries within 2 years." And that was enough to knock my credit score down. So typically, unless you're serious about something, now again, I told you with a house you need to pre-qualify, but a lot of these guys, car salesman dudes, will want to run your credit to kind of get you in the office and just spend more time with you, and it's probably on some algorithms, probably you know whatever they're gonna have a more successful sale, but to let them run your credit numerous times is probably not a good idea if you're concerned about your score. So some of the information on here, um, yeah, public record information. I never saw any, obviously I never had a bankruptcy, so that stuff's always been clear. Collection agency, yeah, that would be bad. So again, this person's, his credit score is not going to be good. Last year he was an architect and he's going bankrupt. Anyway, so this is kind of an artificial example. Well, maybe in Alaska, but anyway, typically your hopefully your credit report is going to be quite boring, but it's probably going to be quite long, and you're just looking for any extraneous information or anything that is incorrect, and then you need to basically send them a letter, protest this thing, and get it corrected. And different credit bureaus will have, they're all independent. So their information should, in a perfect world, be the same on you, but a lot of times it's not. And so you'll see different credit scores, because they're, pardon me, putting more reliance on one thing or another. So here's some debtors. Here's some payment cycles. So if you get, like, let's say you get an ASCIIgram from, the utility company or something saying you're delinquent on your bill, and you take care of it and it doesn't go to a credit, whatever collection agency, that's probably going to not be visible. You're going to be still viewed as somebody with good credit. But if you get it to the point where they have to uh, refer that collection to a collection agency, what happens with collection agencies? They're like Repo Man, and they'll buy bad debt. So let's say you skate on a credit card and you owed them like $1,000. Well, the credit card company, they want to be in the credit card business. They don't necessarily want to be chasing people down. So they'll, and sometimes auction that off, and they'll auction off, $1,000 of your debt for $100 to some bill collector. And that's the bill collector's gig. That's how they work. That's how they make profit, is that they buy this basically entitlement to collect $1,000 from you, and they only paid $100 for it. So that's why, they're a bit more aggressive, because they stand to benefit, and that's also why it ends up on a credit report, because that credit card company got screwed here. They gave you $1,000 and they only got $100 from the bill collector, so they're going to be a bit angry for a bit of time. Credit score, so we're familiar with that. I've got a thing in here, I think, to show you, and it can affect the interest rate. So, but again, it's competitive amongst banks, amongst lenders. But if they're saying something about, a 2% loan on this vehicle, and you go in there going, yeah, but for you it's going to be 5 or something like that. Yeah, that could be due to your credit score. So you want to have the best score possible, but you know, especially in your college years, to sweat that you don't have a great credit score. For the most part, I don't know. I think the more long-term approach, you'll have the credit as you need it in your life. Just don't do anything to damage your credit. But to take artificial measures, I don't think it's worth it if it entails, paying more interest. So yeah, they've got their magic formula. This is what these guys, assert that it is. But yeah, new credit, different types of credit. So that's what happened with me. They said, in fact, the silly mortgage company, I don't have them anymore, but they were calling me up, asking me if I wanted another loan from them, and I clearly did not want another home loan. I already had one with them, but their deal was they were concerned about me by taking out all these other loans, and I really only took out one eventually. But because I had applied at all these different places, they were concerned that it was going to degrade my ability to pay them back. So they were artificially or whatever, deceptively saying that they were concerned about, whether I needed more home credit. But what they really wanted to find out was, whether I was jeopardizing their equity by overspending. Anyway, different scores said that. So 350, 850. 600 being a good score, good enough. I mean, that will probably work. That will probably get you the credit you need. The other, if you have a score in the eights, they'll go, oh, that's great. You have perfect credit. And maybe it'll make things go a little bit quicker. But I don't know, especially post 2007, 2008, the whole mortgage problem they had there. The documentation is more thorough than it was years before and when I had, average credit. So you got to get that thing corrected though. They're required to, do it in a timely manner, which they consider 30 days. Did I skip one? No. Okay, improving your score. Yeah. This is all just good stuff. I mean, yeah, it'll improve your score, it'll improve your life. Um, Destroy credit cards, but keep accounts open. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like other accounts out there. Um, but I do have certain accounts, like for example, like I said, if you've got a bank and you've got a checking account and you don't have overdraft protection, that's not good. That's foolish. So they probably will make contingent upon that, you having a credit card with them. Well, for me, for example, and probably for a lot of you guys, you might use the Alaska Airlines card because you want the miles, which is not a bad plan as long as you pay it off every month. If you pay it off or don't pay it off, yeah, their interest rates aren't competitive. You'll find that with credit cards. The ones with the very low rates don't have very good perks, and the ones with the good perks, well, they have huge interest rates to penalize those people. They're going to make their money some way. Call creditors if unable. Yeah. So silence. If you just think they're not going to notice, I'm just going to slip under the radar. They notice. And if you call and you talk to them again, they're interested in getting their money back. And the worst case scenario is a bankruptcy and they lose it. So they definitely don't want that. In fact, they even have credit counseling agencies within the credit cards. Like let's say you got a balance of like 30 grand or something. And it's on credit card debt and it's rolling at, 20% or something. If you call the credit card company and say, I've got a problem here, they may have already identified it, but they may put you in some sort of debt consolidation thing where they say, okay, let's just cut back on the credit card. Let's put this debt under some sort of installment type thing where you're going to make a fixed monthly payment. No more, putting extra money on this credit card, but we'll be able to get you a lower interest rate. And it's probably better. Well, it is better to work with a credit card directly rather than some of these, third party scam guys who, will for a fee say to negotiate this. Usually that fee is just one more bill that you can't pay. So talk to the credit card agencies first. Reviewing your credit report. So again, give that a go. That's part of the homework. Now, definitely do not turn this in. This is kind of an honor system thing. Just make sure you can draw it and see if the information's correct. And I'm telling you, they don't have perfect information based upon some of the information, some of the things I think. I usually can't even access a credit card report because so much of the personal information they have on me is wrong. So anyway, there's whatever, as long as nobody in your credit stream there, your past relationships is a deadbeat, you might be just fine. But just the same, it's something you should know about. Um, so that's what they're saying. Most everybody, I mean, this. So we said 600 was good enough. It's this little wedge down here at the bottom, or at the top in this case, that's going to have real problems. And this 549 and below. I had a buddy, a military guy. He was getting 20% interest on his money. He was dealing with some used car salesman, and this used car salesman was loaning, basically my friend's money out for purchases. They were doing, in-house financing or whatever. So if my buddy was getting 20% per month, how much do you think those people were paying in interest for their used car? I mean, it's just horrendous. And that's where it's very expensive to be poor. Those are the people that get ripped off the worst, are the ones who can least afford it. The people up here with the high credit, I mean, there's a reason why they're there. Some of them are, yeah, kind of Scrooge McDuck types, but others are just smarter with their money and they don't carry balances and they can, they get ahead. Be one of those folks. So the FTC.gov is where you go to get that information. There's also these other sites, Credit Karma and some of these other guys. Now, again, Credit Karma or any sort of, something on a Google type model. I mean, they're going to get your money by selling your information. I mean, and maybe that's information you want, but if you sign up for one of those services, Mint as well, and you start giving your email address, don't be surprised when you start getting, you know, information from financial companies. And fair enough. I mean, if you don't mind deleting those things and you want to use Credit Karma and stuff like that, good enough. I mean, but again, it's just like banks. Sometimes those companies start out nice, benign, and then they turn after a couple years. So again, you got to track that. Um, but anyway, credit score. I see more offers from again Bank of America on the credit card, always offering to give me my credit score, and also my regular bank offering to give me my credit score. Um, we'll look at this thing in a second in terms of the FTC.gov site to show you where to get that. Let me see. Maybe I should just do that now. Screaming internet. There it works. Okay, so, Federal Trade Commission, get your free credit report. Okay, so it's a .gov site started out, and then, they're going to tell you a little about this, about how they're so great, and they, figure this out. The imposter websites, that's sort of what I was talking about. They say free, but it ain't quite free. Don't do that. Eligible. These are the companies, the same three that we talked about. So, I mean, it's all good info. Don't get me wrong. And lastly, you're going to get a referral that's going to avoid you from getting the bogus spam sites. So, where is that link? It should have been right there at the top, right? I blew right by it. To order, visit annualcreditreport.com. You're leaving our site, yes, because we're going to a .com. Now, again, these are private institutions. They're not big fans. I mean, they're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. It's sponsored by those same three companies we talked about. And then request your free credit report. And this is where the questions start. And it is a secure site, but you're going to have to start providing, anytime you're typing in your social security number and other things like that, this is fairly serious stuff. But again, that's why we took the referral to get here rather than just go out and hunt on Google for free credit report because you would probably not end up at the place you want to be. And so they're going to be upset that I didn't complete all that. Fair enough. What happened to our chart here? Do. Oh, PowerPoint. All right. Okay, so identity theft, it's going to happen. Man, it seems like Europe's on the leading edge of this stuff. Folks from Eastern Europe come over and just. I saw this when I lived in Spain. They had these ATMs, and the ATM basically said, whatever. My Spanish just never was very good, but I'd say no funciona, like it's out of order, right? So it doesn't say that until you put in your card, and then it just says out of order after you've inserted your card and typed in your PIN. And so a lot of those weren't even regular ATMs. They were just credit card readers. You put in your credit card, they read the magnetic strip, you type in your PIN, now they got everything they need, and they hammer your account, your ATM account, your credit card, whatever you're using there. They have I'll put that in one of the videos. It's a shows these guys how they basically scam your credit card numbers. They'll put little pinhole cameras in the ATM thing to catch your PIN. They'll put a little false front where you roll your credit card in and it reads that as well. It's kind of hard to explain, but the video will show you just how bad it is. Now that's just limited to that, the credit cards. We know identity theft can, the folks are creative. I'm not going to try and delineate every tactic because they change them and they will get you. It's not an if thing, it's a when thing. So that's why going back and looking at your credit card statements and looking for strange charges, and a lot of times they're small. Sometimes they get greedy, but a lot of times they'll just hit you with a small one, figuring, you won't notice. But if they do it to enough people or they do it to you often enough, you're in serious trouble. So I haven't had, one of these, you know, worst case scenarios, but I do go through credit cards probably, I don't know, at least once a year, the credit card's been compromised. Either they catch it or I catch it, and that's what happens. Another thing with credit cards that has to do with this as well is, especially if you are traveling, it's a well, it's almost imperative that you call the credit card company and you say, look, I'm going to be on the road, doing some traveling, going to these areas, and that will alert them to expect, sort of unusual behavior from you. But as long as it corresponds with, the information you've given them, it'll probably be all right. If you don't do that, and I used to see this flying all the time, where you're in multiple cities on multiple times, you're doing a huge cross country road trip and you're making good time, you're ending up in different states within the same day. A lot of times you'll realize your credit card just starts getting declined, and it's usually pretty easy to get it reactivated, but it's even easier to have prevented that by letting them know beforehand to expect some unusual behavior on these certain days. And again, you just got to monitor that stuff because their propensity to cooperate is directly proportional to the amount of time. If it's a day, they're good. If it's 3 or 4 days, they're a little less friendly. If it's 30 days, they're nasty. So anyway, be careful with that. So yeah, feeling violated, the rest of that. It's usually, my stuff has just been credit cards. I haven't had somebody take over my life or anything, but certainly I've bought, oh, Amazon was the last one. This one was pretty creative. They went through and they got my Gmail address and they changed my password so I couldn't even get onto my Gmail to check things. And then they changed my Amazon login so I couldn't get to the bottom of it. And so then I call Amazon and they're asking me for my password. Well, I don't know the new password. The people had changed it. So, they were good enough to just lock it down and let the dust settle. And, and then especially when they see that they're shipping stuff to these new addresses that had never been on file with me. That was a big one. They had a lot of stuff going to all these random addresses. And anyway, first time it happened to me, but it probably happens to Amazon every couple of minutes. So they were pretty good once I got to the correct person. I've never lost money on it. No, again, if you're on it, they will refund you. I've never eaten any charges. So again, it's all about timeliness. Now, I'll never get the time back, but out of pocket, I wasn't out any money. But yeah, those hours spent on the phone. That's done. Um, yeah. So we're talking true identity theft where it really gets to a massive scale. So. But again, if you let it go, it could have got to a massive scale. Um, yeah, this is getting kind of old hat, shoulder surfing, dumpster dive. A lot of things are done electronically now. Um, Although people do have a habit of ripping off mailboxes, especially in Alaska. Skimming tactics. In fact, that's one of the ones that happened to me last time. Was they got one of those courtesy checks, which I hate. You should probably go paperless if you can. But anyway, they give you those little courtesy checks, which are not a courtesy for anybody. If you happen to use one of those checks that looks like a check, but it comes with your credit card, keep in mind that's the same as doing like an ATM withdrawal on your credit card. Very bad. They start charging you interest on the day that that thing is taken. So there is no float, there is no convenience use with that. And then there's also just a fee that's charged um, on the for actually using the convenience check. So what I saw was somebody got in my mailbox, obviously, and they got one of those checks and they wrote it for $300. So I noticed I had a $300 charge. Actually, it was 310 because the credit card company took $10 right off the top for the convenience of using it. So they try to get you to use those and attach them to the statements. And anyway, there's no way to really get around that other than just going paperless. Skimming, yep, taking the magnetic information, pretexting, or going to a bogus site. If anybody ever calls you, says I'm from your bank or anything like that, and wants information, do not give it to them. Only give information to your bank or whoever when you initiate the call. If it's an incoming call, and then you'll see this on emails too. They can spoof the URLs. So you need to be the one initiating the communication before you start divulging any information. Phishing, yeah. I mean, some people are just flat stupid. There was a huge political scandal that you guys are probably aware of in the past couple of years, and I don't want to get political, but it didn't help that the person was using the word password as their password. So, I don't think you needed to be a Russian hacker to figure that one out. Farming, yeah, same sort of things. Abusing legitimate or so insider kind of thing or crime ring. You'll see it also with I had this one time where my credit card was lost. The server said, "Oh, I don't think I have your credit card." I think she might have. Next morning, I saw a bunch of extra charges from the brewery down the street. So anyway, drinks were kind of on me for a little while, but again, I fought it with the credit card company, and the merchant in that case ate it because they took the credit card without my signature, obviously without anything. So the credit card companies can be quite nasty to the merchants. I accept Square credit cards, or Square processing, but I had to get one of those magnetic strip readers because otherwise I'm liable for any fraud. If I use the old school ones, the ones that don't read the chip, um, any fraud that happens is on me, and I can't afford that. So I had to pay $40 or whatever to buy the stupid reader from them, but it's worth it. Plus, if you got an iPhone 10, you don't have the little plug-in thing anyway. You need the Bluetooth. So, quick aside, violating your mailbox. So that will definitely happen. I've had that happen so many times. Lost a passport, lost all kinds of stuff. Shielding personal information at home. Yeah, different styles of shredders. Some are good, some are bad. A lot of times, though, the merchants themselves have taken a lot of steps to make this much better, which can be frustrating. Let's say you lose your credit card and you're like, oh, I'll just look at the old statement to figure out what my credit card number was. It's not on there. They'll usually be just the last four. And it's really tough to. Most of the information is very rarely will you see the full Social Security printed on anything anymore, which is a good thing. Install a locked mailbox or rent a PO box. Not a reality for a lot of folks, but maybe should. Secure sites. Yeah, shouldn't take those calls. If they want the information, then call them back with the number that you get independently, not a number they tell you to call. But to scrutinize bank and credit card statements, that's the fail safe. Regardless of the tactic that they're using, that's what's going to help you out. Uh, yeah, personal checks. People just don't use personal checks that much anymore, so it's not that big a factor. Should probably do that in terms of having the mail held, especially if you're on a long trip. Most businesses are very concerned about this themselves because they know that they're on the hook if they don't protect your information. So, or if you do get violated, you can track it back to somebody. Certainly, put it on them. But I don't know how many times. It's every week. Target or Home Depot or somebody or just the U.S. government somehow gives out your information. So the only fail safe is to see what's being charged against you. So it's step back one by accident and identity theft insurance. Maybe if it's included, but I've a lot of these insurance. We'll talk more about some of the consumer insurance. Um, yeah, there's so many scams out there that it's really tough to collect on them. It's not like life insurance or something. Some of these smaller consumer ones they're not the protection you thought they were. Take immediate action. So again, that's the key. Um, yeah, and I try not to, phone calls for problems, any kind of complaint. I just find it pretty much ineffective because you have no recourse. I will typically, you can send them an email, but man, those are easy to delete. I tend to, if it's something serious, I write up a regular letter and I mail it to them, and I keep a copy. It's just so out of the ordinary anymore that I think I just get more action from the merchant, and they, especially like a phone call. Well, we don't remember that, or it's you can't 6 months later figure out what was said. At least an email will help, but a real letter is sort of a, I don't know. It seems like it's more effectual in my mind. Contact the police. I've done that before. And sometimes you just have to. I mean, these people say, okay, we're going to give you the money back, but there needs to be a police report. And it's such a joke. You go down to the police department, APD, you pay your $6 or whatever, and you do your silly report, and you're no closer to getting your stuff back, but it fills their square and they're good. Federal Trade Commission, yeah, because they're going to be. Anyway, I'm getting a bit cynical here, but yeah, they got a lot of issues to worry about. If you've ever seen The Big Lebowski, it's kind of like that rug that gets lost. The boys at the crime lab. It's not like Bones where they're going to be tracking down your stuff. There's no crime lab, you know, going to be focused on your situation. It's just too many folks getting ripped off. Contact the creditors and others who may be impacted. So, again, one thing I used to do, and I think it's a pretty good practice, is especially when I was going to some sketchy places, in the Middle East or whatever, I would get the contents of my wallet and just put it on a photocopier before I left, front and back. So if my wallet does end up being missed or I need to contact somebody, I know, quickly what was in the wallet and what the numbers were and all that stuff. I probably wouldn't take it with me on the trip, or maybe I would. But anyway, if you're putting it on a copy, you can make two copies, but as long as you can keep it someplace safe. But the immediacy in terms of the action means getting calling the right people and knowing what your account numbers were if they're not available at that point. Useful sources. So again, if you have some bad information, yeah, Equifax, which you remember is one of the credit bureaus, um, will maybe put an alert. And again, merchants will check. If somebody's trying to impersonate you and is going to go out and run some loans, it's going to end up at one of these credit bureaus. And if they know that your identity's been compromised, your credit score is going to go to zero for you and for everybody else. So it's a bad time for you to try and get a loan, but it's also, a way to kind of put a cap on the situation until you can get the thing cleared up and make sure there's not any damage. Again, we're talking big loans, so they've got Experian on here and probably TransUnion, so we got all three. Um, so that's it. So we're going to talk about managing your credit, but the big picture is, look at your credit score, look at the information in there, and just make sure, there's if you truly have bad credit, your credit report says that, then yeah, that's the way it goes. But what you're looking for is, where it says you've done something that you haven't. More stuff about that. We kind of touched on this already. Convenience user paid in full, monthly statement for record keeping, make purchases you can't afford. Certainly. And me as a merchant, I'm trying to encourage that. Whatever. I'm going to get paid within 3 days. The fact that you can't pay your bill, they don't come back to me. Um, and excessive spending with the minimum payments. Yeah, that is a problem. Let's see what's on here. Um, that link to the video, the fraud video, I'll pull that up later and put it in your video section. Things can get completely out of control. If you just make the minimum payments 1.5% per month. So that's not even that high. That's what, 18% annual. Most of the credit cards are into the 20s. So these numbers would be even worse. Applying for a credit card. If you're initiating the credit card request, least every time I've done that, they've, it's much harder. Um, when the requests come through, and the only time you get the credit card offers is what I'm trying to say. When they come to you is probably when you don't need them. Once you have good credit, man, they're going to overwhelm you. But if you want credit, you want to establish credit, it is kind of tough. That's what they're going to look at. How much money you got, what you have collateral, and they're going to get some form of a credit report on you. Also, try to stay away, especially when we've all done it. I thought it was impressive to have American Express card at one point, but number one, the stupid thing's not accepted in a lot of places, and number two, it's a status card that you're paying an annual fee for. So really, kind of evaluate what's best for your needs, income, existing debt level, and economic conditions, which you don't have any control over. But what they really want to know is your income, and then your debt level. You're going to type in your social, and they're going to look at your credit report. So if you ever go to get a credit card, they're going to ask really two questions: how much do you make, just to sort of verify, the information that they're going to see on the credit report is correct, and then they're going to look at that credit report and see how many other credit cards you have, and how much is, if they're all rung up to the max. But again, they make boatloads of money off of people who are have multiple credit cards and ring them all up to the max. I mean, that's why credit cards are a good deal for the rest of us, is because those other people who are paying those minimum payments and paying all that interest, they're keeping those people in business, and they might even lose money on people who pay off their balance every month. Although they're still going to get 3% right off the top from the merchant. Uh, MasterCard, Visa, American Express. Yep. I'm just, whatever. I've just been in a bind. A lot of times I'll be working for a company. They'll give me an American Express card, and I'll go to get gas or someplace, and they won't accept it. American Express, I believe, charges 4%. And so a lot of merchants are like, yeah, we'll take the MasterCard and Visa because they're typically lower for the merchant charges. Sometimes you have these, retail proprietary cards, so like a Kohl's card, a Gap card, something like that. And a lot of times you might have to have them because that's kind of their business strategy. If you go into one of those stores and try and buy something without a credit card, a lot of times it's the price is marked up a bit, and then they have these great deals for people who have their credit card, and it's all baked in. Credit limit, the maximum amount that is allowed on overdraft protection. Probably not a good idea. If you try to use a credit card for below or above your credit limit. And I've done this certain times with when I'm buying equipment, and they're stupid enough to accept a credit card, and I'm talking like a big purchase, 20, 30 grand. I'll if they're not going to charge me a convenience fee or any fees, I'll put it on the credit card and just pay off the credit card and take all those miles. But if you're going to exceed your limit, you can just call up the credit card company and say, hey, I've got a $30,000 limit. Can you increase it up to 35, you know, for this purchase? And they've always agreed. And then again, you pay that off, because to carry 35,000 on a credit card, through the payment cycle and get charged interest on that would be exceedingly painful. Annual fee, yep, keep track of that, and then the incentive. So you're going to have your different things. Keep track though. Some of these cards I've noticed, one in particular, I don't want to mention the name, Capital One, but they gave me all these free miles, like 40 or 60,000 free miles, and they were not worthless, but they were not the same as miles with the other cards. And I think with 40,000 miles, you might be able to get to Seattle on their lowest day. So um, be aware that those miles aren't a one for one thing. Grace period. So that's what you're achieving. You're going to stay within that grace period to avoid paying interest. And then interest types of interest charges on credit cards. I'm not too interested in this because I'm not going to pay them. So anyway, I mean, whether fixed or variable, or tiered, just it's just kind of unacceptable to get yourself in that position. You need to have, you know, a strategy that's going to prevent you from carrying a balance. And if you are going to carry a balance, then you need to try and line up some other sort of loan to pay that off. And again, if you had, 401k or something like that, this might be a time to take a loan against your 401k. You can get up to whatever 25 or 50,000. Typically, it's pardon me, half of your money available, and pay off that credit card, and then pay off that 401k loan. But just to keep it all on a credit card that's not going to work for you. Regulations on interest rates, yes, and cash advances. Avoid those. If they're not your friend, they are going to, again, just like the identity theft. If it was me getting that credit card advance for the $300, it would have cost me at a minimum 310, and there is no grace period. The interest rates, you'll see the interest rates on cash advances a lot of times are even higher. So, you're right at the get go up in the 20% range, and it's just not smart. So the finance charge, typically we're only going to really talk about the average daily balance method. And this isn't, this part isn't necessarily testable because again, you don't want to be one of the people paying interest. Adjusted balance. Typically it's this average daily balance, but anyway. APR. APR is what things are quoted in by law. So that's way, you're comparing like apples to apples, and you can actually look at the rates. If you're looking at a simple interest rate, it's not going to be the same. So by law, you'll see on everything, whether it's a car loan or a credit card, it'll be calculated in an annual percentage rate, which takes into account the compounding factor. That's a no-brainer. Higher interest, higher rate, and the financing period. So again, simple interest, just as in anything else, compounding is the normal. Simple interest is easier to calculate, but typically it's done on a compounded rate. Credit card statements, previous balances, cash advance. So I have a few credit cards out there, and in fact, I have one that I've had for, I don't know, probably 5, 6 years with like a $10,000 balance on it. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought you said never ever to do that. Well, I get these offers in the mail all the time about 0% interest. And so I'll roll it onto that credit card. And that's $10,000 that I've been able to use without being able to pay it back. I think it's down to about 7,000 by now because even making the minimum payment when you're not getting charged any interest at all, it does bring it down. But um, and I'm hoping at some point that they go, this guy is ripping us off. We're not going to send him any more credit card offers, and that would be great because I get 5 or 6 a day, and it's just annoying. It just fills up the mailbox. Other things, always scrutinize the statement. So again, you just want to look at those main columns. You want to see that well, number one, you want to look at all the charges. All your transactions are correct, that the merchants. But up in the charges part, the amount of money that's accrued in interest and other things, hopefully you're seeing all zeros in those. Um, but again, the main emphasis that you're doing with the credit card statement. And again, if it comes to you in the mail, it's potentially too late. I mean, too late for them to be friendly. If you look at it online and kind of get in the habit of doing that at least once a week, you're going to be far better shape. By the time the one comes in the mail, may not be relevant because you've already checked it before, and the one in the mail, you again may just be looking at those columns that talk about the charges that are being assessed to you. Credit Card Act 2009. Again, a lot of this is the legalese, but it does result in your protection but it's obviously getting updated all the time. If you feel like you're getting screwed over by a credit card and it's something, it probably is an illegal practice. I mean, credit cards are pretty straightforward. If you pay the bill on time, it should, um, um, you shouldn't have any problems. And if you do have some fraud and you reported it in a timely manner and they don't take care of it, they're probably in the wrong. So, you may want to email somebody else or talk to somebody else and then follow up with an email. But again, it's much better to have a written record. So be a convenience user, basically. Um, yeah, if you think you're going to carry a credit card balance and then still invest, investing can be great, but even the best investments are not going to earn more than your credit card. The credit card is going to cost you more than you can earn typically in investing. And oh, by the way, any money you win or gain during investing is going to be taxable. The credit card interest is not tax deductible. It's coming right out of your paycheck. Avoid credit repair services. So, what they're talking about there are typically those third party ones that say they're going to help you out, or you could walk away from your bills or something like that. That doesn't really exist. The only way you can really do that is through bankruptcy, and you don't want to do that for a number of reasons. Now, calling the credit card company directly and getting a referral to their, credit card association people to try and consolidate your debt, that's not a bad option. But the third party guys are not the ones you want to use. Self-imposed credit limit, monthly savings goal. So again, you just got to be consistent and consistently disciplined and not be one of those people who, doesn't realize it's actual money that you're being spent. Resolving, yeah, borrow money from a family member. You can do that once. Reducing your expenses, though. I mean, and just don't let it happen from the start. Just, live within your means. So, personal bankruptcy. Yeah, chapter 7, chapter 13. So, what you basically do in this case is you go to the court, you say, look, I can't manage my debts. I need you to do it for me. And if they do that, you can't squabble when they say, well, guess what? We're in charge now, and you don't need that car. Well, no, you don't get to keep this, or you don't get to keep that, or this is going to be sold. I mean, you have turned over control to them. And oh, by the way, you've trashed your credit history for, you know, about 7 years at least. So it's not a get out of jail free card. You don't necessarily get to walk away from it. Plus, there's some nasty things, especially like student loan debt, alimony, other things that you really want to walk away from, perhaps. Uh, that's not, those aren't discharged. Those are not forgiven. Discharges when they mean where they're basically erased. Those debts are still going to be out there even though you declared bankruptcy. So there's a few things that fall in that category. Um, Chapter 13 is okay, you screwed up here, but you still have a job, you still have a means of getting out of this situation. This is sort of a wage earner plan. We're going to come up with a plan for you that's going to keep you out of the Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but we're going to exert some control and you're going to continue to work to pay this stuff off. So, two different ways to go. And you may want Chapter 7 and they may say, nope, nope, you're paying this stuff off, or it's not fair for you to leave all these people who extended you credit, leave them on the hook. You're going to have to stay with it. So, decisions. A lot of times they will, they'll give you an artificially low credit limit. I was offered a Discover card. I don't know for what reason I took it, but they gave me like a limit of $3,000, which you can't really do a whole lot with that. But the good news is you can't really get in a lot of trouble with that. So, homework. So check out that site. So go back through there and look at the credit report thing. Um, go to that site and just see what they're have on you. What they whether any of it's an error or just what the information is. And then chapter 8, page 229. And that'll do it. All right. Talk to you next week.